All right, back. It's Monday evening, Weather for Weather Geeks time, and this is kind of a special edition of Weather for Weather Geeks because we're going to spend a lot of time in this video talking about an update to my annual winter forecast. You may recall that I put out my initial winter forecast about a month ago on November the 11th, and as has been tradition over the last few years, a few weeks later, 4 weeks later, we're going to do an update on what to expect in terms of snow and in terms of temperatures. Now, just a reminder, the temperature forecast is for the true months of meteorological winter. The snow forecast is basically first flake to last flake. And of course, we've already had some snow. We'll talk about what we've seen so far and again, what we can expect going forward in this video. First of all, fast start to the season, meteorological winter, December, January, and February. So far, it's the coldest start to December since 2010. We've had a couple of warmer than average days, and we'll have another one on Tuesday, but then after that, another shot of cold coming Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But basically, the first week solid of December was colder than the average in terms of our afternoon high temperatures. We struggled to get above freezing a lot of the time. In terms of snowfall at the Youngstown Warren Regional Airport in Vienna in Trumbull County, so far in December, 6.2 inches. That's about 2.6 inches above the average. Now, we're not expecting to add much to those totals anytime real soon. There might be a little snow on Wednesday, but lake effect will probably miss us mostly to the north and east later this week, so not expecting a big change in our snowfall numbers anytime real soon. But where we stand for the season so far, the legend's up at the top. Anywhere where you see blue, that's 6 inches or more for what we've seen so far this season, going back to November. Basically, it's kind of right along in north of Interstate 80, where we've seen 6 inches or more so far this season. And of course, we have some double-digit totals thus far in far northern Trumbull and Mercer counties, and, amounts, of course, quite a bit lower off to the south, not much more than trace amounts so far this season, once you're down towards the Ohio River and the East Liverpool area. All right, I've been mentioning on Weather for Weather Geeks over the last several videos that we're going to make a fairly aggressive change to our winter expectations. Now, that does not mean that we are expecting a really, really cold and harsh winter. But it does mean I do think there will be more opportunities for some cold and for some snow this winter than the last couple of winters, and more than we kind of bargained for about a month ago. And I'm going to try to explain a little bit why that is. What we're looking at on this map are sea surface temperature anomalies. And your eye is, of course, drawn to this area right here. That's our budding La Nina. It is weak, but it is a factor. Also, this warm tongue out here in the Pacific and cooler water banked up against the Gulf of Alaska and the west coast of North America. The Atlantic is, for the most part, very, very warm. And it's also important the water temperature anomalies out in the Indian Ocean. Now, I mentioned La Nina is pretty weak. One of the things that's changed with our thinking over the last month is the influence that La Nina is likely to have for the winter as a whole. I still think there will be technically a La Nina this winter, but going by the traditional definitions, it's very, very weak and probably only going to maintain itself as a true technical La Nina for a handful of weeks. It'll probably start to fade away during the middle of winter, January and into February. Now, this map shows the water temperature anomalies compared to history. The next map shows water temperature anomalies compared to the global average in all the oceans. And if you paid close attention there, the blues are a little deeper. And so, relatively speaking, this La Nina, while in the traditional definition, it is quite weak. When you factor in how those waters in the equatorial Pacific compare to the rest of the globe currently, it makes for a stronger looking La Nina. So I do think that the true background state of the atmosphere across the globe is in a La Nina phase, and perhaps a little more so than meets the eye. That being said, it's still on the weaker end, so there's going to be other things that can influence the jet stream and influence weather patterns across the northern hemisphere, and I do think that there can be more cold getting introduced into the pattern this winter. We've already seen evidence of that since about Thanksgiving across North America. Now, you may know, if you've paid attention to my seasonal forecasts in the past, we rely a lot on analogs. We look back at past years that we think have similarities in the fall heading into the winter season, similarities to this year. And my analog list has changed somewhat since I put out my initial forecast about a month ago, we've dropped some of the La Nina years that were a little bit stronger than just a weak La Nina or a cool neutral. So in other words, sort of a La Nina, but not quite there. We dropped years that are quite a bit more in the La Nina, solidly in the La Nina category. And so what we have on this list is a mixed bag of weak La Ninas and cool neutral years. 2022, 2023, a pretty good analog, even though that was a La Nina. 2016, 2017 is on here a few times. That's also a pretty good analog. A weak La Nina. 2013, 2014 is of particular interest. It is probably towards the top of the list of best analogs for this winter season. And if you're a true weather weenie across our part of the country, that was a very cold and snowy winter, not only in eastern Ohio and western PA, but in a lot of the eastern U.S. That was a pretty harsh winter, and there are quite a few similarities to the overall setup this year. 2001, 2002 is on the list, along with 2000 and 2001. You know, weak La Ninas, cool neutral years, kind of dominating our analog set. And this is what the map looks like when you stitch all those years together in terms of temperatures. Now, when you stitch these years all together, it shows still a pretty warm signal across areas east of the Mississippi, but this map looks different than our original analog set, which the map looked like this. And you can see there are some different years on here that were stronger in the La Nina category, namely 1999-2000. We dropped that as an analog. There are other similarities this year to 99-2000, but I think the La Nina that year was just too strong to be included in the list anymore. We dropped 2020 and 2021. We dropped 2005, 2006. We also dropped 11, 12, and 2010, 2011, amongst some other notable years that we dropped. And the result is a map that looks a little bit colder across the U.S., even though in the eastern U.S., you know, the overall average is on the warmer side. So my top 5 analogs, you know, I didn't include every single analog, but I included the 5 that are certainly at the top of the list. And what we notice here is it is a mixed bag of pretty warm winters and a real cold one back in 2013, 2014. 2000, 2001 was also a cold winter, although it was not particularly snowy. We had below average snow that winter. 2013, 2014, one of the coldest in modern times, and also the snow 23.2 inches above the average. When you average out these 5 years, these top analogs, you get numbers that look like this. Temperatures averaging about 1.5 degrees above average, and snow about 10.9 inches below the average. Now, at the Youngstown Warren Airport in Vienna, the average snowfall for a winter season is about 67 inches. So this would imply, if you just averaged these analogs together, that we would end up in the 50s for total snow at the Youngstown Warren Airport. But of course, that's just one location. We have a viewing area that some places typically see much more snow than the airport does and much less snow than the airport does. So back to temperatures real quickly. Here's our original forecast. It kind of, you know, looks similar to our old analog set where cooler weather was favored in the Pacific Northwest and warm weather was favored from the Rockies on east. Here's a look at the updated winter forecast for the lower 48 states. I think there will be more cold building in Canada at times, and occasionally it's going to get the green light to come south and east. So while the winter as a whole may end up being warmer than the average in a lot of this area, it's not going to be, I don't think, by as much or as big of a margin as we thought about a month ago. And I do think the risk is there for more significant cold shots to come our way this winter season, particularly I think as we go into the month of January. You know, one of the key ideas of my original winter forecast was that either January or February would likely be very mild, and I no longer think it's going to be January. I think there is still a pretty good chance that February may end up being quite mild, but you know, there's a lot going on in the modeling and kind of the fundamentals of the atmosphere that point towards, you know, plenty of opportunities for some cold and for some snow as we head beyond the holidays, especially, and into the month of January. So here's what we've done with the percentages. This was the original forecast put out about a month ago. We put it at about an 80% chance that the winter would be warmer than the average, and only about a 10% chance that it would be cooler than the average. And our original forecast put these percentages on the snow numbers. About a 55% chance of below average snow, and about a 23% chance of above average snow. Here's a look at the new percentages. Again, this kind of jives with the map I just showed you. We think the odds still favor warmer than average temperatures when you combine December, January, and February, but not by as big of a margin as we thought earlier. So we put it at about a 40% chance of warmer than average, about a 30% chance of cooler than average, and about a 1 in 3 chance that it's very near average in terms of our temperatures. And the snow forecast, no surprise. We have different numbers on here, given the expectations for more cold in the pattern. About a 30% chance of above average snow and about a 35% chance of below average snow. And more specifically in our viewing area, here's a look at some numbers. At the airport, again, we average in the 60s for snow in a season. This is the updated snow forecast expectations. And as you can see, we're going to be near to slightly below average, we think, region-wide, but there's usually a big variation in our annual snow from north to south because, of course, of lake effect. So I think there's going to be some 70-plus inch totals for the season once you get off into true lake effect country in northern Trumbull, northern Mercer, and points to the north. Now, how does this winter compare to the last couple of winters? The last couple of winters have been way up here in this corner. Drier, less snow in other words, and warmer. This year we think is closer to that average, kind of the center of the graph, both in terms of temperatures and in terms of snowfall. Let's blitz through the forecast for the next few days now that we've talked a lot about the winter. Our Tuesday is going to play out kind of like today did, although a little bit of the opposite timing in terms of the steadiest of the rain. Today was in the morning. Tuesday, the steadiest of the rain, is likely to be afternoon and evening, but there could be some patches of drizzle certainly Tuesday morning. Just plan on a damp but mild Tuesday overall, but then a big change coming our way. Here's a look at this Arctic cold front. There's actually 2 fronts on the map on Wednesday. The initial front will kind of keep temperatures just holding steady in the 30s on Wednesday, but then this is the true Arctic front back here, and this will roll through late Wednesday and Wednesday night, and behind it, the coldest air of the season is coming our way, it looks like, for Thursday and into Thursday night. In terms of snowfall, I think there can be a period of wet snow on Wednesday, but I don't think it adds up to much. Maybe small slushy accumulations on the grass. The roads should be just fine. And as the lake effect machine really starts cranking up on Thursday, it'll be more of a west-southwest flow, so it's going to be more aimed at Erie up to Buffalo and not so much down in here. We need more of a northwest flow to get the lake effect rolling in our true TV viewing area. But this cold shot, while potent, it is brief. Will be well below the average, of course, on Thursday with a high of only 24. That's despite a good deal of sun. Also, a mostly sunny forecast for Friday. Won't do us much good, though, as we'll be no higher than 30. But Friday's kind of a transitional day. Back to mild weather for the weekend. Back to some rain chances for the weekend. But next week, it looks pretty consistently milder than average, but not by a huge margin. There's been some cooler trends in the modeling, especially right around the 17th through maybe the 20th. Does it look harshly cold? No, but does it look as mild as it did last week for that same period? No, it doesn't look quite as mild. I do think there can be some cold getting back into the pattern before Christmas. Some of that same modeling, though, would suggest that we start warming up again pretty significantly as we head towards the 25th and towards Christmas Day. I think on Wednesday, which is 2 weeks out from Christmas, we'll do our initial white Christmas, guesstimate compared to historical averages, since we're at the 2-week mark on Wednesday. Of course, that forecast is certainly going to change as we get closer to the holiday, but about 2 weeks out, that's usually when we start taking some educated guesses on the chances of an inch or more of snow being on the ground Christmas morning. Thanks for watching this updated winter forecast and weather for Weather Geeks on this Monday evening. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday.